Hello and welcome back to the Transatlantic Chinwag. Another one, and I think it's episode 7. That might not actually, the 7 reference might not actually mean anything to my American friends. It's a darts thing. Anyway, no, it's not a darts thing. What we're talking about, oh my god, this has started off terribly. It's a Strictly Come Dancing thing. 7! So, yeah. Anyway, I should probably start again, but I'm not going to. Let's leave it in. Let's be natural. All right. Officially grounded in California for a few weeks, and it's great. No travel for the last couple of weeks. Been very busy with work. It's been there's an awful lot going on right now. So hence why I haven't done a podcast for a few weeks. I think I'm heading to Seattle a week on Friday. Haven't booked it yet. It's a reminder to myself. I need to book that. I've got a meeting with a client. So maybe I'll do a podcast in Seattle, but it might be an in-and-out trip. We'll see. In and out, as in and out of Seattle, maybe the same day, not In-N-Out Burger, although. Anyway, so, all my life, eat, sleep, work, repeat. I think we all know it too well. It's been busy, but I've been enjoying being in Dana Point, trying to settle into life a bit more. Pretty well timed. Life updates. The missus has started the new job now. She's really enjoying it. She's in week 2. So it has been good for me to be here when she gets back from work. It has definitely been a shock to my system. I'm sure it's been a shock to her system. But she's getting up at 4:30 in the morning. So I've not quite managed to figure out how to comfortably get back to sleep and then start work at 7 a.m. So yeah, it's been a tired one. But look, it's exciting. It's the next chapter for Kelly, and it really helps us put our roots down here, which is really exciting. So yeah, Seattle end of next week, heading to Chicago first or second week of April. And at the end of April, my brother is coming for a week, which is going to be fab, and I've got the week off, so it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I'm sure it's going to be funny as well, but it's going to be fun. Jeez. I'm going to struggle to speak today, but that's okay. Okay, that's my mini life update. Oh, and I bought an electric scooter. I spent far too much money on it. It was very much something that I wanted to do, but yeah, whether I needed to purchase that right now, silly me. No, it's actually been really good for getting around, and with Kelly using the car now to go to work, it's really cool. It does about 28 miles per hour, which is scary, terrifying. Oh, not going that fast, don't worry. It does about 30 miles on one charge, which is nuts. I don't think it'll do a full 30 given the hills around here. I think I may have talked about on a previous podcast how big my head is. Now, if someone clips that, I'm going to sound like an idiot. I am an idiot, so it's fine. What I mean by that is I've actually got a giant skull. It's all those big brains, man. It's not, sadly. It's really not. But, so helmets don't fit my head very well. For those of you who are watching, don't ask me why it's on the shelf, but there's a bike helmet there of Kelly's that I've been using with my electric scooter, and I look like an absolute moron. So I'm not going to demonstrate. I was thinking that through my head just now. Oh, I could put it on. It's interactive for those who are watching. Definitely not. All right. So, gosh, what am I going to talk about today? It's a good question. Not going to pretend and say it's been easy prepping for another podcast. Finding it hard to get guests, which is fair enough. I don't have many listeners yet. I have to have optimism yet. So that's been quite tricky, although Laura has assured me she's going to be back on the podcast very soon. And I'm working on a couple of folks. I've reached out to a few people who I know have actually made the move to another country, one of them the US and one of them Australia, who I thought might be really interesting. Like, I know them. I've known them in the past. I'm not close with them. Maybe we don't talk now, so it'd be great to catch up with them and see what they're up to in life as well. But to get their experiences of the transatlantic experience. Anyway, so I thought today I'm going to talk a little bit around the world of work, specifically, I guess, in a corporate, semi-corporate desk type job, client-oriented job. More specifically, my pet peeves that I've observed in the last 11 years in the workplace. Now, I will caveat, I love all the folks I work with. They actually make work what it is, and I'm surrounded by great people, fortunately. This is more in general as to what I've experienced over the last 10 to 11 years, 11 or 12 years of my career. Not necessarily right now. It's not anyone right now. I'm going to start small in terms of my pet peeves. My first one: fire drills, last minute requests. Drop what you are doing and do this now. What we used to call this in the UK is a JFDI. That's what I like to call it. Just effing do it. And most of the time, those last minute requests are something really quite specific that only certain individuals in the business can get the answer to. Now I'm a leader. I'm really conscious of this, but it still happens. I hate doing it. Sadly, in a fast-paced industry, this happens more than you'd want. It's almost inevitable. So I do try and mitigate this where possible. I don't succeed as often as I like. I will often do the task myself, especially if I'm capable and it doesn't require specific reports or things like that. I genuinely hate bogging down my team with something that's often very menial and doesn't necessarily respect their time. I don't like it happening to me, so I don't want my team to feel like that. It doesn't happen too often now, but I have seen the fire drill mentality for the last 11 years across multiple countries and companies now, and it's definitely up there. It's small, but it's awful, and it can be a culture killer. I think it's brutal. Anyway, so another thing that I'd try and do if I can't do it myself, I think it's important to provide the why, provide the context as to the ask, why it's important, at least who it's for, so that it's not just a directive. I'm forcing you to drop your shit and do something by end of day, and I'm not going to tell you why. I try and avoid that at all costs. And even that still happens. And that's happened throughout my career. I see people doing it. But the leaders who I've witnessed do it best, provide the why, and they also try to limit the amount of fire drills where they can. And look, if you can't provide the why, at least acknowledge that it's not ideal. And some cases you're going to be apologising for the short notice. I think it's just more respectful that way. I think the challenge comes when it happens all the time. Managing upwards and feeding that back can often be to no avail. So having a transparent and open relationship with your team, based firstly, I think, on trust, integrity, credibility, they'll know it's not deliberate. And if you want to work for the person that's leading you, I've managed in the past, obviously, where you really want to work for them, then if they also recognise that your efforts, like, look, this is not the norm, I'm sorry, look, this is a pain in the arse, I really appreciate this. It's just one of those things. Anyway, pet peeve number one, fire drills. Can't stand it. Put it in the pet peeve jar. It can derail a day, even a week, and set you back for even longer playing catch up on all your day-to-day stuff and meaty projects or anything that you're working on, or that you have to pause, or you simply end up working late. Fire drills are not good, but sometimes unavoidable. So I've witnessed good leaders manage it in a better way, and I'm trying to do the same. Okay, number two. Too much talking, not enough doing. What do I mean by that? That was a bit of a sinister laugh. The delaying of making a decision. I've seen this throughout my career. I've seen clients do it as well. Great leaders that I've witnessed will deliberate, see if there's common ground or consensus. But if there isn't, and then there isn't going to be, pending further research or whatever else, they make their team feel heard. They explain why they're making the decision, and then they press go. Go, 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 go. I hate circling back and not making decisions. When you reach the point where no further data point will clarify options more clearly, and no amount of work will either, then it's just hesitancy, because the reality of a compromise is that something's going to suck as the result of the decision, but also something's going to move forward and something's hopefully going to be really good. Stalling on a decision, I think, has negative impacts on culture. Definitely doesn't empower folks, but I think it leaves people stewing because it's either obvious what the decision needs to be, or the stress of not knowing which way something's going to go isn't great either. as a leader, now, this is something I'm striving to improve on all the time. I think if I look back even 6-7 years ago, I'd probably hesitate a bit when having to make a big decision. And often back then, I mean, it was different in the sense that I didn't have the authority to make a decision. But yeah, looking back, it's definitely something that I'm conscious of, and I will try and push decisions. This is getting worse. Push decisions wherever I possibly can. Anyway, huge pet peeve of mine. Let's put it in the pet peeve jar. Pet peeve jar. All right, God, I'm on fire. Jeez. Big decisions have consequences, some of which are uncomfortable. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in my career is that the sooner you can be comfortably uncomfortable, the train starts to move. And more often than not, you'll hopefully be driving the train, or you're at least along for the ride. It's the best piece of advice I received a good few years ago before I moved to the US. Was get comfortable being uncomfortable. I saw that the client was really difficult all the time, and it was really hard work. And I was like, oh my life, and I'd come home stressed. I'd tell Kelly about my entire day, every single day, because it was just uncomfortable. And when I had that piece of advice, something flipped in my brain where it was like, oh God, I'm going to enjoy this. I know it's going to be uncomfortable. So let's try and go along with it and get comfortable being uncomfortable. Anyway, don't know why I'm giving advice. That wasn't what I was meant to be doing here. Jeez. Don't listen to me. I am literally just ranting about my pet peeves. Okay, number 3. Emails versus phone calls. The amount of keyboard warriors and CC merchants that I've come across. And I'll explain what I mean by a CC merchant in a minute. It's staggering. But I also think it's an easy trap to fall into, especially if you're not comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. I'm not just talking about negotiation here. I think I'm talking about sending an email, asking for information with a deadline, when you could just call and get the information instantaneously. In the world of sales, the travel's intense. Being sat tackling a backlog of emails is frustrating, especially when you're on the move. You're in an airport, you're flying, you're doing this, you're doing that. Quick 30-second phone call to get an okay or get an answer on something instead of an email, killer. Email can be 30 seconds on the phone and it can move the business along. Kills me every time. Then, missing a deadline with a client or internally, and the answer you get back is, oh, I sent you an email and you never responded to me. First of all, shame on me, or shame on whoever I've witnessed not responding. Fair enough, hold your hands up, acknowledge that. However, did you think to call? Because this wasn't a hard thing, most likely. In these scenarios where I'm saying phone call over an email, they're not hard things, they're quick things. So yeah, the art of speaking in my mind should never be lost. And I know some people hate talking on the phone. I didn't really enjoy it when I was younger, but I got comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to know your audience too, and I think they need to be... Shit, Kelly's at the door. Be right back.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm not stopping because... Anyway.
Sorry, podcast.
Don't turn the lights on. I've created an awesome ambience.
Okay.
You can probably turn it on in the kitchen though. They're in the oven. There you go. This is live, folks. Where was I? Oh, my life. You've totally ruined it now.
Sorry, get back into the flow.
Oh, thanks, darling. Thank you.
Hello.
So where was I? Art of speaking should never be lost. Some people hate talking on the phone. Kelly, you're one of those people. So anyway, yeah. Oh, you can't. That's it. You can. Yeah, it's fine. Jeez. For those of you watching, the light is now on. Yeah, thanks. Well, I can't edit this bit out because I'm talking, darling. Anyway. You can't be running the tap, though. I've only got, 10 minutes to go.
Okay, just edit it out.
Got 10 minutes to go. Jeez. It's going to be a shorter one today. Anyway. The art of speaking should never be lost. But you do have to know your audience as well. How they want to be interacted with and how they need to be interacted with to get the best results. Some people prefer an email. Some people prefer a phone call. Oh, thank you. The lights are back. We're back in the room. Awesome. Also, avoiding a phone call because you don't want to have a debate. Basically because you know there's going to be resistance to what you're asking for. And sticking it on an email and then CCing every Tom, Dick and Harry. That's what I mean, by the way, in terms of the CC merchants. That just riles folks up. And it can cause tension between folks that I just think is completely unnecessary. There is a time and a place for an email, of course. But the CCing of key stakeholders and all of that, there's a time and a place for that too. I do not think it's a scenario where a phone call can get you the answer you need very, very quickly. So the flip side to that is the next one. Sorry, emails versus phone calls. We're putting it in the pet peeve jar. All right, so flip side, unnecessary meetings versus an email to get alignment. I'm going to sound like a world of contradictions now, but the amount of ridiculous time-sucking meetings that I've sat in on in the last 11 years that could have been an email. Oh, look, it's painful. Don't overkill meetings. Some things can be wrapped up nicely in a bow via an email, or simply seeking alignment in the email and just getting yes and no's in from people. If there's a ton of no's, you probably shouldn't be sending the email. You haven't done your work to get it to the point where it's ready for a simple email finalization. Also, trivial things that can be squared off in an email. Not every decision requires a big meeting. I find this really frustrating, especially if it's a simple yes or no, or it's a simple report that's needed. I don't need to talk about it, just send the report, get it done. There is more place for meetings than emails on the whole, I think. But meeting overkill is real. And I've lived this, and I'm sure loads of people have. Loads of people listening one day. And I'm sure it'll still be the same then. The transition to Teams meetings during the pandemic and to where we are now, in an 8-9 hour day, I can do 12, no, in a flipping 7 hour day, 6 hour day, I can do 12 Teams meetings. It's crazy, back to back. So anyway, unnecessary meetings versus emails, let's put that in the pet peeve jar. Lastly, back-to-back meetings. Oh my God, excuse me for being a little bit crass, but when do you get to pee, snack, eat, stretch, breathe, any of those things? Oh my life. Giving even 5 minutes between calls and being mindful of it and planning it with your team and people that you're working with gets you so many brownie points, even just subconsciously, rather than always being late to the next call. It gets old fast. I work with some people who are on Teams calls all day, every day. I mean, I'm one of them, and we're all guilty of it. I turn up to some calls late because of that, but I try my hardest not to. It gets very old fast when the same people are late every single time. And it's not the best representation of yourself either. All right. Back-to-back meetings. Teamsitis. Putting it in the pet peeve jar. So I've got one tip for you, though, that someone shared with me recently. You can change your Teams ringtone. Game changer. I used to have a BlackBerry back in the day, if you remember those. And every time it rang, it was like PTSD. I was like, oh my God, this is work. I don't like the sound. Similarly with my iPhone, change the ringtone. 5 years of conditioning to Microsoft Teams at the same sound. It's not good for you. I don't think it is anyway. Change the sound. I haven't changed it on my phone yet. I need to figure that out. But change it on my computer and bada bing, bada boom. Although my phone and my computer ring at the same time, I get one nice ringtone and one of the same old ringtone at the same time. So it's an improvement. I just need to figure it out. Anyway, all right. That is enough about the world of work for one podcast. And yeah, this is going to probably be a shorter podcast today. But, short and snappy. Better than nothing, right? Considering no one's listening. 20 minutes, whatever. Are we on? 21 minutes? All right, anyway. So, wouldn't be a TransatlanticChinwag podcast without a little bit of UAP talk. So, I talked a couple of weeks back, maybe it's 3 weeks since I did the podcast, I'm not sure, about the new task force, the new task force headed up by the Republican Congresswoman, whose name I can't really say. I think it's Annalena Luna. I'm just going to call her Congresswoman Luna. That's how I think about it. And then I think of Luna Lovegood and Harry Potter, and the brain goes. Anyway, Annalena Luna, I think I finally cracked the name. No real news since then, other than some bold social media posts saying that she's going to get to the truth. But I did learn from listening to a bunch of the UAP topic podcast people that I shared out on the podcast once upon a time. I did learn that she doesn't have the power to issue a subpoena, to force documentation or force interviews or force people to come forward or whatever else. She needs permission from the head of the oversight committee in government, which makes me a little more than a little bit skeptical as to what is actually possible to be accomplished. If you haven't actually got the power to do the things yourself, you've got to go to someone who might be a gatekeeper of secrets or whatever else. Also, on top of that, it's meant to be wrapped up in 6 months. Man, I hope there is progress, but it feels like a really short period of time considering the pace at how things go at this topic. Like, it's 12 months between hearings if you think of the things that have gone on in the US government, like when David Grush testified, when David Fravor testified, Lou Elizondo recently. It's a good 12-month gap between them. So I'm feeling skeptical. However, there is a task force set up, whether it's a ruse or whatever else, there is a task force that exists to specifically go after government's secrets. And there's no smoke without fire. There is something going on. I believe in the tech, guys. That's my standard line. Jeez, I need to shut up. But here's my next big hope. There is a new UFO documentary, but it's basically, I think, a new form of UFO documentary in that it's a disclosure documentary. It's called The Age of Disclosure. I think it comes out this week. It premiered at a film festival, I think on Sunday, and it's Wednesday now, the 12th of March. Basically, filmed completely in secret. 34 or 35 former and current government officials, such as the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in Trump's cabinet. There are numerous people in very high places saying this is real. And in the trailer, there is credible government witness who work for the government saying, I have seen aliens and seen bodies. Whether this is one of those dodgy clips where it's like, someone told me that I've seen alien bodies, blah, 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 blah. So we'll see. A lot of talk online, a lot of talk on all the regular UAP podcasts that this is a big one and that it's going to move the needle and that it might actually be a documentary that if you want to get people up to speed on where we're at in this process of learning something new, this will be the one that you would show very skeptical family members to basically acknowledge that something is going on. I don't think it's the smoking gun, but this might be a step in the right direction. I think the fact that it's coming out in March, ahead of this committee, is fascinating. Yeah, let's see. The other thing I was pondering on, and I was very unimpressed with the government's response about the drones, as we talked about previously, which are still going on, by the way, and still being spotted. But there's clearly an awful lot going on in the world right now, particularly, obviously, with the war in Ukraine, Gaza, tariffs, potential trade wars, potential economic downturn, you name it. There is all sorts going on right now. I don't know if this topic, which is already really sensitive and crazy and wacky, game-changing, I don't know if it's top of the agenda yet. I still have hope. Anyway, that's all I got, folks. Flipping out 26 minutes, probably my shortest podcast, but I enjoyed that. And I've vented some pet peeves that I've witnessed over the last few years. Be interesting if in the comments you've got any pet peeves that you witnessed at work that you want to share. That'd be great. Also, a shout out to Martina, a good friend of mine that I've not spoken to in quite a long time, commented on the podcast, the last episode I sent out, saying that she's listening from Switzerland, which I thought was really cool. So hi, and if you want to come on the show, give me a shout. The light's back on, which means I am requested in the kitchen because I'm on dinner duty. Great to catch up as always. Please like and share. If you want to come on the show, please reach out. Thanks for listening. Cheers. Bye.